Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be standing before you today. I feel so incredibly lucky to have been welcomed onto country so graciously by Mr. Robert Isaacs. Whenever I get welcomed onto country in such a special way, it just makes me think, my God, how incredibly lucky are we? Because in a similar manner, in the same words that Mr. Isaac used here, people have been welcomed onto this very country for the last 50,000+ years. How incredibly lucky are we that we're part of this epic heritage? We're part of this epic story. So to follow up on that, Mr. Isaac, what I would love to say is, I begin as always with gratitude heavy on my tongue for the traditional custodians of this living land on which we gather, the Noongar people. I pay my respects not out of protocol, but out of the self-evident truth that their culture surrounds us, informs us, and indeed is an integral part of what it means to be Australian. It is because of this reason, and so many more personal ones, that I extend my gratitude to the elders both past and present, and to all Indigenous peoples present in this room. I wish I could begin my speech by being able to properly acknowledge everybody in the room as they deserve to be, from the young ladies of Penrose College, some of whom I was very lucky to meet, and they were very kind to actually take photos with me. I still find it strange that people want photos with this face. I find it astounding. See, when you live 23, 24 odd years of your life thinking you're a terribly unattractive man, right? And then you're 25 suddenly and everybody wants your photo. It's a bit of a shock to the system. Especially when young ladies want photos with you. You're like, really? You really want this? Someone's not paying you, forcing you? You're not under duress at the moment? So thank you to you guys and welcoming me so specially here. And also thank you to Meg and honouring my request that I be introduced simply as a grateful Australian. I'm not my CV, I'm not my achievements, most of which I did not do alone and therefore cannot claim credit. I'm just simply a mere man, an incredibly lucky Australian. I suppose you could say I'm Charlie from the Willy Wonka movie. You all know the movie, yeah? Yeah, I'm Charlie from the Willy Wonka movie, who then got a golden ticket and then won the lotto the next day. I'm him. To explain that to you, I need to take you back a few steps. But before I do, I just would love to acknowledge all your parents here, all the mums and dads and grandmas and grandfathers here. Thank you for coming and making this a community event. And also all these distinguished guests, far too numerous for myself to go one by one, but so particular to Ms. Ira Buttrose, the Australian of the Year, who will have wisdom for you, will have knowledge for you. Unlike me, I have no wisdom, I have no knowledge. I'm so sorry, the Australia Day Council totally ripped you off. You're stuck with a total doofus. I'm sorry. I suppose to make sense of how I got to be Charlie from the Willy Wonka story, you need to understand that I was born in a place far away from this. I was born in a hospital in Kabul, right in the middle of a civil war. And indeed, the moment I was born, outside, a car bomb went off. Now, I tell you guys that story just to give you a sense of the madness that reigned in that place. Think about it. What military objective is there to blowing up a maternal hospital? None. It wasn't war. It was just chaos. It was anarchy. And it was in that particular moment that I happened to be born. Now you could say, Akram, that's a very unfortunate set of circumstances to be born in, but I would like to beg to differ. I would like to say I was incredibly lucky. And from day one, I got a lotto ticket. Because I was born to an amazing woman. A woman not only with an extraordinary sense of compassion, but a woman with a university education. And the person who helped my mum give birth to me was one of the best pediatricians in all of Afghanistan. The reason why she was there was because she was my auntie. She, an extraordinary woman in her own right. Right now she works with refugees and the most disadvantaged people along the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And she has delivered more polio vaccines than anybody else I know. She's saved more lives than most of us can count. And her story is actually quite remarkable. She topped her school, then went into medical school. There were 300 men and 3 women of which she was just one, and she graduated as the top student of 303 people, all men. This one woman made it to the very top. So you can imagine how incredibly lucky I am to have been born to these two amazing women. And then things just got even better, because I went into this family and I was surrounded by 20 adults. And the youngest person in the family was about 16. So it'd been 16 years since they'd had a baby in the family. So I was just loved so ridiculously well. So I'm totally okay with attention now, as you can see. This feels natural, this feels normal. Of course people would be looking at me and laughing and having a good time with me. It just feels natural, because from day one I was given one of the most precious gifts you could give to a young child, and that's the gift of being loved utterly and unconditionally. And then our world was turned upside down. Some of these events are very, very sad, and to do them justice I need more than 15 minutes. I almost feel if I talk about them in 2 or 3 minutes, it does the memory of the people who went through them dishonor. So I'll just say this: our world was turned upside down. A very precious person in our lives was taken from us. And suddenly our lives were in grave danger. So much so that my father was more or less going to be executed. And somehow he made this extraordinary escape from this jail. That in itself is an amazing story, and a story that I cannot tell you in 5 minutes. It will not do it justice, the horror of it and the tragedy of it. So he runs from this place. You can think of running from Fremantle to the city, flat out. He's a 35-year-old man and he's in a terrible shape, right? He's got a pudgy belly, he's a bureaucrat. And he's running flat out. And so we just had to run. We had to run with whatever we had. My father grabbed jewelry and money. That's what he stuffed in his pockets. My mother, fascinatingly enough, and I think all mums and grandmoms will know this, and actually I've seen a lot of bushfire kits, and I see this in there too, photos. That's all my mum took. It says something about us, doesn't it? And I was talking to Meg about the power of relationships, and the fact that this is such an important part of Penrose. I think you guys get it. And my brother and I, we grabbed 2 boxes of juice. Very profound, very deep, yes. Big thinkers even back then. And then we just ran. And this extraordinary woman carried me on her back, and my brother, through this war-torn city, dodging bullets, grenades, shrapnel, all sorts of horrors. Again, a story that can only be done justice to if I had much more time than this. But suffice to say, somehow against all the odds, again winning another lottery ticket, we made it to this place called Peshawar. Peshawar was another horrible, horrible place. It had open sewerage. For the young ones in the room, that means there were no toilets. No toilets. When I tell this story to primary school kids, they often say this, and it comes back again and again. And little kids have this way of just going to the heart of the truth. One of the little kids, this little girl, put her hand up at the back and she said, "That sounds like poo-poo land." Yes, little one, it is poo-poo land. And the sad tragedy of it is when you have a place like that, disease just runs rampant. You have overcrowding, overpopulation, crime, extreme poverty, the kind of poverty, we could say technically it's living on less than $2 Australian a day. That's extreme poverty in very technical terms, but that doesn't really capture the human tragedy of it. Extreme poverty is having to choose between feeding one of your children or giving life-saving medication to the other. That's what extreme poverty is. It's having to make that choice, which is no choice at all. So it was in a place like that I went to some terrible, terrible schools that didn't even have chairs, tables. When I tell this to young Australians, they just go, they can't even fathom it. And I'm so glad they can't. And from there, things just got even worse. We went through some very difficult years, and our lives were still in danger. And then this funny little place called Australia, of all the places we applied to, actually gave us an interview. Of all the places that we applied, again, we won another lottery ticket. They actually said, "Come in for an interview." The story of the interview is another tale in itself. And again, to do it justice, I would need way more time. So we'll have to skip that part too and get to the heart of the matter, which is when I came to Australia. When I came to Australia, we were given this house, but it was empty. It was completely empty. So we walk in, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, have no idea we're in this alien world. They might as well have put us on Mars. We've been about the same. So we walk into this empty house, and our next door neighbours, I still remember them, God bless their souls, but they were a really nosy bunch. They kind of like, the ones that peer over the fence. Hello neighbour, how are you? And we're like, we're good, thank you, how are you? Thick Afghan accents at the time, thick. We're very good, thank you. And they go, can we come in? Inviting themselves. Sorry, that's not how they speak. Sorry, I'm getting my accents confused there. Oh mate, can we come in? And I went, yeah, sure. So they come in and they see this empty house. The response was just remarkable. People donated, everyday Australians in our community, in our neighbourhood, donated furniture, chairs, tables. We still have some of those tables with us. And even more importantly, some of them actually took out my mum and showed her how to shop. Something as remarkably simply as that, but made a profound difference. And our next door neighbour, her name was Dr. Cecilia Batterham, sweet old lady. She started giving my brother and I tuition in English. For me, that's Australia. You know, a lot of people criticise our great nation, and I go, I've seen us at our very best, and we're so full of compassion. We're so full of empathy. And what was even more remarkable is not once did any of our neighbours put a condition on their generosity, nor did they say, Akram, this is how you're going to be Australian. They left that choice to me. And in thinking about that is, for me, that is Australia. It's a choice how to be Australian. Very few countries give us that privilege. You choose how you want to be Australian. There are very few things I would die for, but I think this would be it. There's freedom to be Australian the way we want to be Australian. I love the fact that we have an Australia Day. And I love the fact that some celebrate it and some actively go out there and protest against it because of the grievances that we've had in our past. I love the fact that we allow that dialogue in our great nation. But I'm getting a little sidetracked. At school, I come in and I'm this big-headed brown boy at an all-white school. So suddenly I stick out. Secondly, I don't know any English or don't know it very well. Thirdly, I don't know the culture. And it's a rough gig. Rough gig. My first spelling test, I stuff it all up. And a few of the kids go to me, you're stupid. And the first time I was like, no, I'm not. On the fourth and the fifth test, when the whole class was more or less saying it, I kind of believed it. And that was the tragedy. I kind of started believing the terrible things that some of the other kids were saying about me, that I am stupid. I am no good. And I went through this really, really dark patch in my life. And I started becoming one of those boys, the ones that wears the hoodies, jumps on the BMXs, rides around, and gets up to all sorts of mischiefs. Yeah, that was me. I suppose the word delinquency would capture that state in my life very, very well. I saw some of the things I did I'm really ashamed of. And my life was heading down a very dark trajectory. If you told me then one day you're going to stand in front of Penrose College and talk to them, I'll tell you, but here's where it all changed. And it goes back to some of the people that are here in this room. I had an amazing teacher. His name was Mr. Andrew Bell. And some of you might even know him. And Mr. Andrew Bell has this way. I had incredibly low self-esteem. I had no prospects. And Mr. Andrew Bell would always come up to me with this massive smile on his face, and he would always go, hello Akram, how are you? And to a kid who thinks they're no good, right? They're like, whatever. I would always brush him off, but he would never give up on me. It was so annoying. He wouldn't give up on me. He just kept on believing. And and believing and believing, and then just wore down my defenses. And eventually he said, hey, why don't you come to the library and I'll tell you some stories from history, because I know you love stories. And I would have probably responded something like this, whatever. And against all the odds, I sat down there and he came with his usual big smile. He said, Akram, I've got some stories for you. And he sat down and he told me the story of Napoleon and how he conquered France for the second time with just a handful of men. All of France with a handful of men. I was just sitting there enwrapped. Wow. And he did two things. The first that he did was he used history as an excuse to teach me English and how to articulate myself. So when I'm speaking to you right now, I can't claim any credit for this. This is a gift from Mr. Andrew Bell and all those hours that he put into me. And even deeper than that, it's only now 10 years later do I realize it. He was using English as an excuse to teach me how to be a decent young person. So when I come to Penrose and I see a poster like this, I see you have some vision in common with Mr. Andrew Bell. You get it. And education is so much more about the curriculum. It's so much more about halls like this. It's about the full development of young people like those that I'm looking at right now. And the second thing that Mr. Andrew Bell did, which is the genius of Mr. Andrew Bell, he gave me something to give back to others. He not only just gave and gave and gave, but said, hey Akram, why don't you go and share these stories with other people, your other students? And I did. At first I was like, no, nobody want to listen to me. And then his characteristic, wait a second, let me get this word. Can someone help me here? No, not the word charismatic. Characteristic. Okay, let's go with that. You know what I'm talking about. My English has run out. And he said, they will if you say it with enthusiasm. And he had this big grin on his face. So I went and I shared these stories with other kids, and suddenly this changed everything. Because for the first time, I had been of service to my community. And something magic happens when you're of service to your community. I think it is so incredibly vital for young people to not only be given, but be given opportunities to give back. Because it is only in the generation of community esteem, which is what I see here, do we develop self-worth, self-esteem. I wish I could say, guys, that your achievements will bring you happiness. They won't. It is actually acts of service for your community that will truly satisfy you in life. And that's how I developed my self-worth. I just told these stories which made others in my class feel better, more informed. And out of that came my own self-worth. And suddenly everything changed. My grades went from failing to by the year of 12, I was getting straight A's. I didn't get any smarter. I was just a different person. And I think about it, how could a shy, introverted kid become the head boy of the school? The only way I can make sense of that was that Mr. Andrew Bell believed in me so much that I could not help but believe in myself too. And that's another thing I see here at Penrose, the amount of belief that Meg has in her students, and what a precious gift that is to all young people. And from there, I've won a lotto ticket after lotto ticket after lotto ticket after lotto ticket. And they've all been educational lotto tickets. Because you could give me anything in the world, you could give me all the material resources and they will run out. But if you educate me, I will have that for life. And that's what I've been given. And is it any wonder, knowing what you know about me, that I would do my absolute best to study as much as I can? So much so that I still haven't left university after 8 years. And when you realize how incredibly lucky you are, like I am, when you realize how incredibly fortunate you are, because I was in Peshawar in Pakistan just about a month ago, and I saw some boys on the street, and they were selling cigarettes my own age, and that was their life, and they're one of the luckier ones. There go I, but for the grace of God. And it really made me reflect on a bunch of other stuff. That nobody's ever chosen the circumstances of their birth, yet so many of those circumstances choose so much for us. And having realized that I'm no more worthy, no more deserving of all these extraordinary opportunities, these acts of generosity than those kids who are still in Peshawar, still suffering. I'm no more worthy. I can feel incredibly guilty, and so can you in this room indeed, for we live in one of the greatest countries in the world. We could feel incredibly guilty for that. Or we could feel gratitude. And we can let that gratitude fill our heart. And I promise you, once your heart is full of gratitude, you cannot help but give back. And that's all I've done. I've just had a heart full of gratitude. There's few times in our lives, right, where we can have a conversation like this, where you are truly listening to me, and I can see that. And the amount of gratitude I feel for that, I cannot express in words. So thank you so much for listening to my story. As you can see, I'm just a grateful Australian. Thank you so much.